Welcome to the Apprentice Advantage, a podcast where we talk about how your company can develop untapped talent today. In this episode of our podcast, we'll be discussing the apprenticeship journey. What is the typical day for a tech apprentice? We're going to find out. I'm your host, Sheena, and I'm joined by my co-host, Lelia.
Hi. So I'm so excited we get to actually interview one of our apprentices. So Ivan, can you just jump right in? Tell us a little bit about yourself and what brought you to Apprenti.
Yeah, first and foremost, thank you for the opportunity. Super excited about this. What brought me to Apprenti, first and foremost, I was born and raised here in Pittsburgh. I grew up, spent a lot of my early childhood in Swissvale. Then I grew up primarily in Wilkinsburg. That's where we bought our family home, things like that. I now reside in Bay Hills. How I got involved at Apprenti is actually the coolest stories. In my local neighborhood in Wilkinsburg, there is an elementary school that got repurposed into pretty much like a community building. It's called Community Forge. Within that building, there's another program called Boot Up. And Boot Up teaches like the local youth and even elderly and things like that how to use technology. They'll build you a computer. They teach you how to use tablets. They teach you AR, VR, things like that. So I got involved through that by knowing the guy who runs the program. I went to college initially for technology. I wanted to work in cyber forensic information security. Thought I was going to be like this big FBI guru and being able to chase down like cyber terrorism and things like that.
Which is fun, by the way. Who wouldn't want to do that?
Grew up like watching Criminal Minds and things like that. I'm like, oh, I'm going to be so cool. Got into it. Then I seen the price of college and I was like, okay, maybe I need to reconsider things. Life took its turn, took its course, ended up having children, got married for a period of time in my life. And then I'm like, I still had this itch for technology. So I had sat Mill down on my hey Mill. I'm like, I've been trying so hard to make this transition into tech. I had taken like a boot camp course. It was in digital marketing. That experience was absolutely crazy. Killed my confidence because I finished the program, went and applied to a bunch of different jobs, come to find out a lot of them were phishing schemes. So I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm ready for the world of tech. So once I did sit down and have that conversation with Mill, he's like, I think you would be an awesome fit for technology. Like, he was like, if you had just come to me, I could have helped you make this transition. He's like, I really don't have a bunch of different connections. I don't know what would be the perfect one for you. But I do have this one that we met with recently called Apprenti. He was like, I actually know the woman who's in charge of like our division. I'll attach you, CC you on an email and then go from there, which he did. I then did the assessment, which let me just say, the hardest assessment ever.
Oh, good to know.
Oh my goodness.
What was the hardest part?
Less about very difficult, more lengthy. I'm a math whiz, love math. The math portion alone took me maybe 5-6 hours.
So you weren't prepared for the lane. The questions itself wasn't that difficult.
They weren't too bad. I think as you start to get like deeper into the math section, you're just guessing at that point, unless you're like a mathematician. But overall, I don't think if you couldn't answer some of those questions, I don't even think you'd be able to make the transition. And I think it is created well to pick out good suitors. So I finished that. And then a month would pass, and 3 months would pass, and 6 months would pass. And I'm like, am I ever going to hear back from these people? Which is like common now that I'm in Apprenti and I know they're like, oh no, 6 months is fast.
Yeah.
So from there, I was still working in construction. That's the field that I come from. I worked in construction for 6 years. So then it had got to a point to where like I had lost my job. So I'm like scrambling. I need to figure something out right now. It just so happened that I still had the email that I was CC'd on with the Mill. And I pretty much cold called the guys. I feel so bad. I cannot remember her name right now. But whenever I did. Maria. Yes. Thank you. So I cold called Maria and it was like the best experience ever. Once I had called her, she was like, I'm so impressed by the fact that you took it upon yourself to even call me and put yourself in this position. This is actually the first time this has happened. She was like, I want to do everything I can to get you into this program. So from there, she ended up putting me in contact with Terrell. I had like my first meeting with Terrell like that December. Then we met again after that. Then the rest is pretty much history at this point. Best decision I've ever made in my life, though, for sure.
Cool. Oh man, that makes me so happy to hear. And also Community Forge is so rad. I'm glad that you found out about us through that.
Yes.
So we already covered this, but what motivated you to look at an apprenticeship instead of like another option?
That one's actually cool. Coming from construction, that's like a huge thing in construction. Apprenticeships, either you're going to go to some type of trade school or you're going to do an apprenticeship. Along with trade school, you have the apprenticeship. Right. How I got involved in construction was I actually worked with pretty much a family friend, and he taught me everything I know like about construction in the beginning. I did like basic electrical, things like that. And it was like through that experience that I understood that you don't have to go to school, especially if someone's going to pay me to learn how to do what I'm going to do either anyway. I feel like this is a much better route. Given my experience that I had in construction, once I found out that that same opportunity exists in tech and better yet in a lot of different fields, like, oh yeah, I definitely need to hop on it because I seen how successful it was in my own life. Given the fact that I had a career for 6 years in construction.
So, Ivan, I know you have made it through your technical training. You also are now currently on the job training. So, can you just walk us through what is your day to day while you were a student at Academy Pittsburgh, as you were in your training? What did that look like? And then what is your day to day now on the job?
First off, let me shout out Gene and John. Gene and John are so awesome. And I think the coolest thing so far that I've heard as far as the feedback with our technical training has been your technical training is harder than the actual job. Going through tech training was you leave tech training feeling like you're not going to be ready, which is their goal. That is something that they told us. So like, we want you to have that feeling of like randomness because that's a part of what our job specifically entitles. You're going to have a lot of that investigative work, but technical training was awesome. I think that John and Gene did such an amazing job, not only preparing us, but also giving us like scenarios that we might not deal with on a job. Also providing us like resources on, okay, say we had a classmate who was concerned with not necessarily discrimination, but more so he was concerned about his appearance. And he wondered, because he had dreads, will people treat me a certain way? And Gene and John did an amazing job at reassuring him that the problem is with others, not you, if that's the case. And if that is something that's happening, then you should definitely reach out to your higher ups. If that doesn't work, then follow these types of chains of command. Coming from construction, that was something very rewarding to hear because that's something that, unfortunately, that's just an industry to where things can get a little rough. So it was very nice to hear that people are here to support me. People are here to give me that opportunity. So that tech training, there's really not much to say, but like tech training is very difficult, but so rewarding once you finish.
Yeah.
How that compares to on the job is totally different. It's a lot more slow pace. It's a lot more forgiving in terms of, say you don't know something, they don't expect you to know it. I work specifically right now in my rotations with the ID cards team. And it's just been such a breath of fresh air. I've never been in a work environment where people are so forgiving and so accepting of the learning process. And I think that was my biggest fear coming into this transition, going from construction to tech. Am I going to have the skills to make that transition? And then even if I feel like I have the skills, are my skills going to be valuable to a team or to my workplace? And not only do I feel valued, I feel so appreciated. I feel competent as well. And it happens out of nowhere. And a lot of that, I think, once again, attributing it back to Gene and John, you become comfortable being uncomfortable in tech training. So that way, once you do get on the job and they don't want you to be uncomfortable, they want to put you in the most comfortable predicaments possible. You're like, oh, this is cake. I can do this easily. So yeah, tech training was difficult. On the job training, so nice, very forgiving, breath of fresh air, honestly.
Great. And you're employed with enGen, right?
Correct.
At Highmark. Fun fact, Gene and John was actually on the show. We interviewed them the last podcast, so you have to check it out.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was a fun talk too. And so awesome. So you're on the job now.
Yes.
So what kind of projects are you working on?
So right now we are in our enrollment period, which is like, before you work with ID cards, you would never understand all of the things that go into them. It's like, cool, you get insurance, you get homework insurance. And then next thing your insurance car shows up at your house. And you're like, oh, that was nicely. I'm going to go to the hospital or whatever the case is. When you're on the ID cards team, no, it's not just it shows up at your house. There's a request. And then from that request, sample cards need to be provided. And then once those sample cards are provided, there are different changes that need to be made to those cards.
There's a process.
Oh,
The process is, it's so much deeper than I would have thought coming into it. But right now, given the fact that it's open enrollment, it's really busy. It's a lot of different requests, different changes that need to be made to cards, different changes that need to be made to different groups, things like that. That's primarily what we work on from a day-to-day basis. Log in. The person that's on my team, we're responsible for like our daily reports. We log in, we do our daily error reports, which is just like spreadsheet work. And then from there, we log into our error requests, and that's where we receive all the requests for the day. Several cards need to be reordered, or if you need to put some cards on hold or move some cards to pin status, things like that.
gotcha. Cool.
I know a lot of your learning at the boot camp was a lot of deep training on like technical skills, things like that, because you went through a business analyst course.
Yes, correct.
As you now are on the job training, what are some new things that you're learning on the job?
I think this is like the biggest thing. This is something I never even considered. A lot of people, when you work, you actually work in a physical place. So, being that this is my first time working from home, given COVID, that's like a new thing for a lot of people. The biggest thing is, how do you communicate? How do you communicate with your team members? How do you build those relationships? Like, you've never met these people in person before. It's now you can, all right, well, this is my boss or whatnot. And then once we go on lunch break, we can actually like talk a little more informal. No, a lot of your conversations with these people are related to whatever the project is at hand, whether that's learning, whether that's getting requests done, things like that. So a huge learning point for me has been, how do I communicate with people? How do I stay around my workstation? How do I respond like effectively and convey my tone properly when I respond to people? That's really been a huge learning curve, but it's one that I've transitioned into very well. We not only have the Teams chat that allows you to speak to whoever you need to speak with, but also as well, you also email anytime. So that was, I would say, the biggest skill that I've learned. How do you work when you can't communicate?
Yes.
So that's the biggest thing. Another thing I would say I really learned well is having patience for myself. There's been so many times that I've got to work and I'm like, okay, am I confident enough to do this? And it's not that the task that's being required of me or asked of me that time is difficult. It's more so that, giving that you're still in this apprenticeship role, given the fact that you mentioned this isn't something that we necessarily learned in our tech academy, this is more so like on the job learning, which is once again all a part of the process, allowing you, throwing you in those waters, seeing like, how do you figure out things on your own? How do you research? How do you reach out to your connection to say, I changed XYZ on this file. Does this look right to you?
Hmm.
If it doesn't look right, hey, can we meet for a moment, maybe 15 minutes, 10 minutes or so that way we can walk through this again? And just taking those steps, I think a part of learning is you taking ownership of that learning and saying, I want to learn this as much as you want me to. I'm not satisfied with my inadequacies of my skill set. I want to continue to improve. And I think as long as you have that attitude, especially with my team, everyone is more than willing to go the distance with you.
Yes,
For sure.
that's cool. It's always exciting, like when you start a new job or you start in a new field. Also, a new job comes with new challenges.
Yes.
What's the biggest challenge you've dealt with in your new line of work, and how did you overcome it?
How I said, I think what I learned the most is communication. Along with communication is, how do you receive that communication? I think whenever through text in general, you can't convey tone. So I think, given the fact that in our job, everyone works in different departments, my go-to doesn't necessarily work in my department. He's a part of another department. So his schedule is totally different than mine. So we necessarily can't meet on a voice call or meet on a video call or anything like that. It may be, I just have to message him back and forth. And through that messaging back and forth, tone can be off as though you feel like. So in that, I've had moments where my direct go-to, I remember our very first meeting we ended up having. So every week we had the Highmark Career Academy Fridays, which everyone that was in this cohort with us, we all meet on Fridays and we speak about how our day has been, how things have been going, the things that we've been learning on our different teams, because we're all a part of different teams. And in there, they had asked me, they're like, so how did it go? Did you have the opportunity to meet with him? And I'm like, message to him, but I feel like I'm bothering him. They're like, you really think that? I'm like, yeah, I think so. But then once I had the opportunity to meet him, so he's just naturally a laid back and chill guy. And that actually matches my personality a lot more than I thought it would. So coming into it, I had this perception that he was going to be this mean person, or maybe that I was being a bother. But in reality, it wasn't any of that. It's just the fact that's his personality. He's not a bad guy. He's actually one of the nicest people. He's so willing to go out of his way for you, and he's so understanding. My first, I would say, month, not even first day, not first week, my first month, I kept on messing up my timesheet. And I'm like, I'm going to get fired. I cannot keep messing this timesheet up. And every single time he's, I got you. I got you. I got you. I got you. And I'm finding different ways each time, like, how do I come up with a new excuse so I don't get in trouble? And he's like, I got you. So he's awesome. Awesome.
I know you were able to share some of the challenges, some of the things that you're learning, but I'm curious, when did you have your aha moment? This is really starting to click. I'm really starting to become really successful in this role? What was that time?
The funny thing is that I think we've been in our roles since May. That moment for me happened maybe 2 weeks ago. It's so funny because it's like, it's not like I'm at work and I feel useless. It's more so like the small things I do at work, they're so appreciative of it that I'm like, are they treating me like a baby? But it was really cool because we have these Excel sheets that we get, and sometimes we have to just copy and paste information from the sender into our own data set or sheet or however you want to consider it. And the sheet that we get sent has empty spaces at the end. So let's say there's 10 numbers. At the end, it'll count it as 12. And the system that we then have to take those numbers into and put that into, it doesn't read it correctly. It reads those empty spaces as a number. So the machine just like conks out. And we were all in a meeting trying to discover, like, how do we fix this? And it was like rocket science. So I took it upon myself. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to create a template of an Excel sheet, not only for myself, but then I can send this out to my team. So that way, anyone who's working with this software can just come in, upload, use the Excel sheet that I created with the formula built into it, and it will remove all of the empty spaces. It took me maybe 6 hours, got it together, broke it the next day, got it back together, forgot how I even formulated it, all of that. But in the end, it was maybe like a week later when I got it working. I got used to using it every day. And I'm like, wow, this is really cool. No one told me that I had to create this formula. No one said, hey, you need to do it this way. It was like the way we had it was already working. I took it upon myself to say, let me be more ambitious. How do I make my day easier? How do I make my job easier? But most importantly, how do I add to my team? And I felt, okay, what is something I know how to do? I can easily I can easily search on Google. If I can search Google, I can search how to create formulas. I know how to type the formulas in Excel sheet. Just that extra step allowed me to feel a lot more confident in my job, because someone else may say it's enough that I'm doing it the way that they're asking me to do it. But in my mind, it's if I want to be ambitious, if I want to continue to grow, if I want to continue to put myself in position, if I want those opportunities to continue to come my way, to be ambitious. And a part of that ambition is seeing in which ways does someone else say, that's not so important. Okay, but that's important to me because I don't have as many skills as this person. So it's almost a thing of how do you get in where you fit in? And that was the opportunity that I seen. I made the most of it. Super proud of myself for making it.
I'm super proud of you too, right? That's a form of out of the box thinking. It showed a lot of leadership skills.
Thank
With
you.
that even said, did you learn a lot of leadership skills during training, or was that something you brought with you from the trades?
Yeah, I think for myself, it's always strange. A lot of my friends, a lot of family, like they see me as this natural born leader. I don't see myself as that. I see myself as so much more of a follower. Like I'm always looking towards the person that's smarter than me. I'm always looking to ask the question that's not asked. I'm always looking in ways to where it's not about me to my own horn. It's like, forget me. How do I become better? So I think that's the approach I always take. But I do believe, if I'm being honest with myself, I had brought a lot of those leadership characteristics into the role. And I understand that that's my strength. My strength lies in my ability to make connections with people. And I'm always going to
Right.
play into that. It's not about me trying to tell someone what to do, because most times people know better than I do. It's more about how do I contribute? How do I uplift? How do I fill in that gap that may be in our team? And I think when you look at a leader, a lot of people look at leadership as the person that's in the back telling everybody go this way. And the way I view leadership is that's the person in the front. They're the first person to get dirty. They're the first person to take a crack at it, to show everyone else that, like, if I expect you all to do this, I'm going to be the first one to mess up. I'm going to be the first one to experience those waters. I think that's what leadership is truly about. And it takes a great follower to even be a great
To
leader.
be a good leader.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. Oh man. So it seems like as you've been going through this journey, like you've been learning a lot, like not just like in skills, but also like about yourself. And I think
Yes.
that's really cool. So now like moving forward, like how has this experience like shaped your like vision for your like the future of your career?
Yes. This experience has just, I think the biggest thing that I've built throughout this entire experience is self-confidence. Self-confidence in the fact that I can truly make that transition. I think, and for anyone in their life at all, I think transitions are always the hardest thing, because with transition comes uncertainty. And that uncertainty causes fear. Fear causes you to do what? Oftentimes play life safe. And there's nothing wrong with playing life safe per se, But if you feel this inkling within yourself that I can have more, I deserve more, I can be more, then it's important to go out and pursue that. I got to my wits end with construction, and I took that gamble on myself that before I even got into construction, I took a gamble and said, okay, I guess I'll try it out. I wanted to work in tech initially, as I said earlier. But construction was the opportunity that presented itself, seeing that as a way for me to continue to feed my family, and it was something I was interested in. That ran its course. It wasn't a thing of, I guess I just go to the next construction job and continue to be miserable. It was, how do I pivot? How do I transition? And my pivot was here into tech. Even with that pivot, there's still the confidence, but am I actually going to be able to have these skills? I had never had a workstation before. I had never had a multiple monitor set up. I didn't even know how to have two windows on one screen. So for someone to have such minuscule tech skills in terms of work production, to now be able to create Excel sheets, respond to emails on time, schedule meetings, schedule time off, have my email respond automatically when I'm out of office, just building this repertoire of a skill set, and to build that so fast has done nothing but consistently increase my confidence, to be able to have opportunities like this to come share my story, to be able to have an opportunity just recently where I went to the tech award show and I'm sitting at the table with the CEO and like vice CEO, like things like that. Or I'm such a young guy. I had this idea that like I'm a small fish in the universe. I'm so small, but the fact that I presented opportunities like this, the fact that when people speak to me, like you're a great person, you're so driven, you're so determined, that makes me feel happy about myself and my character, my output. It's just continue to put your best foot forward each and every day. Take all opportunities that are presented to you with grace, and will continue to be exactly what it's been, which is nothing but great.
Oh my goodness. So this is actually one of my favorite interviews so far because I really appreciate the comments that you've made, the impact that Apprenti has had, but more so just your humbleness and your role.
Yeah, no, it's really exciting to actually also get to hear just your firsthand experience. We see a lot of this stuff behind the scenes, but I don't know, hearing your story is really cool. Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I think a little bit where I was going with what I was just saying is I think that overall I had a conversation about gratitude. And someone was saying that, for example, I'll use the actual example. We were talking about football, and the individual had said, I cannot stand that when it comes to football, people talk about God in football. And it's like God is going to have the favorite. I'm like, no, I don't think that's what it's about. It's not because one team won and the other team lost, God favored the team that won, and then he disliked the team that lost. I think gratitude is whether things are good or whether things are happy. I had this opportunity. And I think so many times in my life, I remind myself when I'm having a really bad day. Maybe I'm feeling less confident in my ability to perform my work the more level. And I think to myself, I've done significantly worse for significantly less money, if any money at all. So what am I complaining about? Why am I mad? Why am I sad? Why do I feel inferior? It's like I'm presenting an opportunity that a lot of people would die to have. And I have it. I've worked so hard to have this opportunity. I'm not doing anything to let it go. And that's what I try to tell myself each day. Each day I wake up, any day, anytime I have a bad day, bad week, whatever the case is, it's like it is truly a blessing to be able to be in the position you're in, to be able to frequent the individuals you're able to frequent. And I don't take that lightly. I don't take it as, well, I made it. I look at it as every day that just as hard as I fought to gain this opportunity, I can easily lose it. All it takes is one slip up, one mistake, whatever. And that's not true because of how everyone is. But the whole thing is I let myself know that because I'm not someone who lives on opportunity. Oh, I deserve a second chance. I deserve a third chance. That's awesome. That's someone's grace allowing you to get that second crack at it or the third chance at it. But in my mind, it's no, one opportunity is enough. And I need to do the most to I need to do everything in my power to make the most of it.
That's perfect because that leads me into my next question, which is like, what advice would you give an apprentice that may be watching this video and they're like, hey, I considered Apprenti, but I'm a little unsure. I don't know if I want to really jump into tech. I don't have any tech knowledge, or I might have a little bit of tech knowledge. Would they really accept me? Can I make it past the interview process?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, and I think this remains true to anything that you do in life, is belief in self. I think you have to have that unwavering confidence. I listened to someone recently who had said, for as much as you talk to others and ask them, like, what should I do about this? Should I wear blue or should I wear red? Does this make me look fat? Is this ugly? Whatever. No one really knows better than you. No one knows how hard you're going to go for the opportunity. No one knows where everyone else may work 8-hour days. You may do a 10-hour day. No one knows where everyone else may look at that Excel sheet and say, this is how I'm supposed to do it. Someone else may say, you know what, I'm creating my own formula. And that belief in self is what carries you through whatever opportunities present itself. If you come into Apprenti, for example, saying that maybe I'm not what they're looking for, then you've already accepted that defeat within that. Let's say you go through the interview process and then you don't get selected. You're like, see, I told you that I wasn't what they were looking for. As opposed to, for myself, and it's not to say be me, but throughout the entire process, and my family would echo me on this. Everyone was asking me, hey, what's going on with work? And I'm like, I see you make the February. This was in November. I had not even met with Terrell. I had not even made it to my second interview process. I knew I'm going to be there. Why? Because I actually knew that. Absolutely not. I can't see the future. I don't have a crystal ball. I just had this unwavering confidence in myself that I wouldn't come this far to fail. I wouldn't think that this was the best thing for my life if this truly wasn't. And I need to do everything I can to make them believe what I believe of myself.
And it makes me think of how you said you were in the candidate pool for about 6 months before you even had this opportunity to interview, right?
Yes.
And we have candidates that are in the candidate pool that will watch this video and say, that's great for him. We're happy for him. He had an employer that's investing in him, but we're still sitting here and 6 months has passed, right? What advice would you give them?
Continue to look for that next opportunity. I think that another thing, there's a show that I'm watching. I'm not going to give a plug, but there's a show that I'm watching and it's
good, plug it.
It's, what is the name? Oh, Rhythm and Flow. It's a rap show. It's a rap show on Netflix. In the show, they have to pretty much bet on themselves. They're all rapping against one another to compete. But the cool thing about rap, and for anything for that matter, is that just because someone presents an opportunity doesn't mean that your opportunities end here. They're probably sad because they didn't, or they are sad because they didn't win. Whereas then on the flip side, you have someone who also lost the competition because only one person can win. And they looked at it as, this is the farthest I've ever made it. This is the best opportunity I've ever had. Had an opportunity to do my own show, produce my show. I got the opportunity to work hand in hand with another music artist who's made it. The opportunity that was presented to me, whether I won this competition or not, is suffice enough. And I think in life, when you take the approach that the opportunities will be there, I just have to wait for it. There was a song in the show, and I believe that is so true. What does success look like? Success is when preparation means opportunity. That's success. You can only do but so much when it comes to success in terms of, I can prepare as much as possible. I can be fastest athlete, the strongest athlete, the healthiest. But if there's not a team for me to play on, can't be a successful athlete. On the flip side, someone can say, hey, I need a cook today. But if I never take cooking classes, if I've never even gotten in the kitchen, then how can I go apply to be a cook? In life, I have to be prepared for whatever opportunities present itself. And what does that mean? That means I'm constantly skilling up. I'm constantly searching for opportunities. I'm constantly adding to repertoire, my resume, my character. I'm constantly making myself as diverse as possible. So when the opportunity presents itself, maybe it may not be Apprenti. And that's just the reality and the honesty of the situation. For me, Apprenti wasn't my first option. It became my option once the opportunity presented itself, but it wasn't my first and it wasn't my only. It's the one that allowed me to have the opportunity to have and why I have as much gratitude as I have to Apprenti, because they seen in me what other people didn't. And that's true.
So for those who are unfamiliar with apprenticeships, how would you explain the value that they provide?
Apprenticeships, if you are someone who believes in their mind, like I know a lot of people are like, hey, I'm not really a school person. I got to go to school and take math class if I'll be a reading teacher, for example, or something like that. Apprenticeships are perfect because not only are you learning the skill that you're about to perform, you're learning the job that you're about to perform, but you're also getting paid to do it. And I think that the problem in today's society, in some way, shapes, and forms, is that we have the skilling up that happens from a theological standpoint, which is I go to school and I read from a book. I go to school and maybe I watch a video or something like that. And that's like a lot of my job experience per se. And then I get into the workforce and I say, hey, I went to school for 4 years. I got this degree. And theoretically, I learned XYZ. And then the job says, theoretically, you don't know how to do anything. And then you're stuck. You're right back in the same boat that you thought you were going to avoid by getting skilled up. Whereas apprenticeships, that's why, first and foremost, an employer is not take their time to invest money, which having an apprentice is a very expensive process, as anyone who's been an apprentice. And if you are part of Apprenti, understand that it's an expensive process. But why would someone take money, take time to skill you up to then not hire you? That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make the most sense for anything to make in life. When you're talking about an adult world, when you're talking about business, is money. Monetarily, that makes no sense. Someone's going to invest their time, invest their money into you, as long as you're putting your best foot forward and you're trying to catch on to whatever opportunity is that's presenting itself. More than likely, you'll have a job at the end of it, where that's not necessarily the case. You can be a valedictorian in college. Doesn't mean that you're going to get that job in that accounting firm, or you're going to work on Wall Street, or whatever your endeavor is. Your hard work doesn't necessarily guarantee a job. In an apprenticeship, your hard work doesn't necessarily guarantee a job, but your chances of landing that job are significantly higher. In my opinion, I'm sure statistics have backed up this one.
But goodness, with Apprenti, you are guaranteed that
Yes.
job because you are a W-2 employee day one, even when you start the training. We have a large candidate pool. We have about 150 candidates that are actually waiting to have an opportunity like you have at enGen. I would just ask, what would you say to an employer who's really struggling with the idea of hiring on an apprentice? Why should they buy into this idea of apprenticeship and hire apprentices through Apprenti?
Yes, I think that there's a saying in the community, in the work community. You go to work, you want to work with people that are pleasurable, enjoyable to be around. It doesn't necessarily mean that, oh, they're the hardest worker. They can be the hardest worker. It could just mean that they do their job well. They do a competent job. And then you can have someone else who's maybe a high performer, but they're a jerk to be around. If you take an opportunity by giving an apprentice an opportunity, essentially, I feel like apprentices, someone who is an apprentice is already betting on themselves, as opposed to someone maybe necessarily who comes in with a degree or something like that. You're also going to get someone whose character is there. I know for Apprenti specifically, part of our process was Terrell has told me, I'm looking for people who want this opportunity. I'm looking for people who preferably have a family, have goals, wants, dreams, desires. He said, because I don't want to take the chance on someone who comes in. Maybe I want to do this. Maybe I don't want to do this. Maybe I'll try it out. And maybe 6 months later, I don't want to do this anymore. Because I want someone who sees this as an opportunity to have a career, have an opportunity to change whatever trajectory their life was on. Those are the people that I'm looking for. And I not only agree with Terrell, but to a higher extent, I think that's a lot of people who do apprenticeships. A lot of people have worked these, maybe a dead end job. Maybe they're in a career, someone who's a part of my cohort. She was actually a teacher already. She's like, forget that. I want to work in tech. So you have people from all different facets where it's not that they're not skilled up. It's not that they don't have these intangibles from other careers, from other life experiences, things like that. It's just they may not have that hard paper, that stamp of approval that says this person knows. But by taking a chance and giving someone an opportunity to not only get skilled up, but to make an honest living while doing so, understanding that this is just the beginning. I have the opportunity to grow. And I think that's the coolest part about apprenticeships, knowing that someone that you take today, the Ivan today, may be CEO 10 years from now. And to be able to know that I took someone who had zero skills in this field. They had their own intangibles, but that opportunity was created by me believing in them and by surrounding them with the resources that obviously it takes that person to take advantage of those opportunities and take advantage of those resources. But knowing that as long as I have the resources in place, this person essentially just has to do the work, and they can be not only a contributor, but a high-performing member of my team, of my company, however you want to quantify it. I think that's too good of an opportunity to pass up. Too good.
But no, we're both really excited to see the future of Ivan and the future of the other folks in Apprenti Pittsburgh. Really, I just want to thank you so much for coming here today, telling us your story and your experience with enGen, and I just wish you the best.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah,
I was about to say, is there anything else you would like to share?
No, I really just wanted to honestly say thank you. Anyone that I talk to about this program, anyone I talk to about where I'm working, what I'm doing now with my life, I think this can also add into the employer thing. I don't think when you're on the outside looking in, there's something about perspective, right? And perspective is hard to understand when you're not there. It's hard to understand what does the landscape of an area look like when I'm way up here. But if I get down on the ground with those people, I can better understand the lay of the land. And I think what's really cool about an apprentice is that you have the opportunity to take someone who has a perspective that most others may not have in your company, may not have on your team or whatnot. And you have the opportunity for them to bring that perspective to a higher elevated level, for you to be able to make decisions, make changes, influence things in a way maybe that you never perceived it to be because of this one person's perspective. Because maybe they've worked for myself. I've worked for a lot of different toxic construction companies or toxic construction environments. So now working in an environment to where all I value the most is communication, is camaraderie, teamwork, things like that. If someone else maybe didn't have those experiences, maybe they don't come in wanting that to the team. So much whenever I speak about this opportunity, I speak about how much it has not only transformed me as a person, but how much it has changed. And I'm so grateful for that. There aren't words to quantify. There aren't words to explain what one opportunity can do for someone's life and how that can be the driving force for them to absolutely change everything that they were currently doing. And I think for you to, if you're someone, if your business, if your company, if you're just someone who has this charitable heart, who has this desire, like, I want to make an impact in the world. When it's all said and done, like, I want stories to be told, to be written and whatever. I think that having an apprentice, by being someone, being a company in your local area or whatever, that creates those opportunities for people. That's such a huge pillar in the community. And for myself, to those people, and most specifically to Apprenti, I'm so thankful and thank them.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of the Apprentice Advantage.
Yeah, we'll be back soon.